Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're looking today at Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 28. You may recall in verse 27, the Lord told Jeremiah to keep speaking to this people, but they're not going to listen, and to call out, but they're not going to respond. And here the Lord has something else to say to Jeremiah as he brings this section of the message to a close. So let's go ahead and read this text in Hebrew as we get started. Ve'armata alehem זה הגוי אשר לא שמעו בקול אדוני אלוהיו ולא לקחו מוסר. אבדה האמונה ונקרתה מפיהם. So we start off with ve'amata. So this is going to be a perfect. It's going to be a perfect. We have the ta ending on it, so it's going to be a perfect. It's going to be a 2ms, and it's cal. And this is also a perfect consecutive. So, because we've been talking in the previous verse about what is going to happen, the Lord wants Jeremiah to continue to speak, and you will. So this is not and you spoke, but and you will speak or speak. Almost as an imperative type of force here. Speak to them. So there's just a preposition el, plus again our suffix. We saw this in the previous verses. Speak to them. Now what are you going to say to them this time? Ze hagoy. Now ze, that's our demonstrative pronoun, but it's not being used here in an attributive sense. This nation, it's being used here in more of a predicate nominative sense. This is the nation. So it's sort of like pointing, like a pointing finger here. So this is, and we have to supply the verb is, hagoy. So there's our article with the word goy, which means nation or people. But it's not the usual word that we find for God's people. Usually we see whereas goy is usually reserved for the other nations around them, the pagan nations. And you have to wonder if there's maybe a nuance of a pejorative sense in using this word for Israel here. I can't prove that, but you kind of feel it a little bit. This is the people, this is the nation which has not listened. Shama'u, this is just a perfect third common plural like we've seen in the previous verses as well. With the formative, it's a cal from Shama. This is the nation which has not listened with or listened in. This listen with has the sense of obey, so let's translate it that way, which has not obeyed the voice, and this is in construct, the voice of Yahweh, his God, or we would say its God. This is a singular, but it's singular referring back to the nation, so it has a collective sense. So I think most of our translations would translate it their God, even though it's not a plural suffix, but it has that sense here because of the collective nature of goy. So the Lord, which has not obeyed the voice of the Lord their God, and they have not taken. So what do we have here? This is just a perfect third common plural with this formative on it, and it's a cal from a verb lakach, which means to take, but it can also have a different sense with this word over here, musar. Now you may know this word. This means discipline, or you may know the verb yasar, written like this, which means to correct or to discipline. So musar is a noun derived from that. So to take discipline has the sense of to receive it, to accept it willingly, to learn from the discipline or the correction that God has been trying to bring, and they have not done that. So this is a nation which has not received or accepted discipline. And as a result of that, avda ha'amunah. So ha'amunah is the word for truth, literally the truth. You can see the article here. You can't put a dagish in the aleph, so you lengthen the patak into a full comment here. And amunah, you probably see your aleph, mem, nun, amen, that we use, which has the idea of being firm or to be established, to be something that is true. And so this is the common word for truth. It can also be translated faithfulness or fidelity, but let's translate it as truth for now. So the truth, and then avda, this is a perfect. With this ending on it, it's going to be a 3fs and a cal from our verb avad, which means to perish. And it's 3fs because amunah is a feminine noun, which is the subject of the verb. So the truth has perished, which is a sad state in a society when there is no longer a standard for truth. And because the people have rejected God and his word, there is no more any standard for truth. So truth, the truth has perished. Now this one looks like a tricky one here. Let's see. We're going to have a vav at the beginning. Could be a vav consecutive, but in this context you have a perfect here, and you're going to see this is a perfect as well. So this is probably just a vav conjunctive. What else do we have on it? Well, let's see. We have a lot of consonants in there. This is going to be a sopformative. So this is going to be, this is actually going to be a perfect, and it's going to be a 3fs again. But instead of a cow, we have a nifal, which explains why we have this ni prefix right here. And there's our verbal root underneath, karat, which means to cut or to cut off. You may be familiar with this word. It's a fairly common word. So this nifal, and once again, the subject of the verb is amunah. So the truth has perished. It has been cut off with this passive idea, or it has been cut off from. There's our min with the nun assimilated into the pei right there, and our suffix on the end, from their mouth. So truth has been cut off from their mouth. This is what happens when a people reject the words of the living God that he gave to guide them into his ways and his truth. So pretty heavy statement that is made when a society rejects God's truth. It's pretty devastating for them. Let's go ahead and hide our work here and look at a couple of translations. First of all, the ESV, which is a pretty direct translation. And you shall say to them, this is the nation that did not obey the voice of the Lord their God and did not accept discipline. So that's pretty straightforward translation there. Truth has perished. It is cut off from their lips. So almost a very literal translation. Another one would be the New American Bible, not the New American Standard, but the New American Catholic Edition, the Revised Edition. Say to them, this is the nation which does not listen to the voice of the Lord. So they translated obey. Listen has that idea as well. It's God, to the Lord it's God, or take correction, accept discipline, take correction. Faithfulness, so now they've translated that instead of truth. Faithfulness has disappeared. This has more to do with the subjective response of the people. I lean a little more toward truth over here. The word itself is banished from their speech. The word of faithfulness is banished from their speech. I get that. And then the contemporary English version, which is way, way, way more of a paraphrase, obviously. So let's see what they did with that. So you must say to them, people of Judah. So this is the goy. We don't get that nuance, which I think is, again, slightly pejorative. People of Judah, I am the Lord your God. So the Lord, his God. Now they've changed this into direct address. So you can see they really moved this around a little bit. But you have refused to obey me. So changing this statement in the third person into a direct address. You have refused to obey me. You didn't change when I punished you. They refused the discipline. They did not accept the discipline, so they made this into a you as well. So they're getting this very, very direct. And now you no longer even pretend to be faithful to me. So truth has perished. It is cut off from their lips. Take this in a paraphrastic way, and you get sort of the general idea. I'm not super happy with that much of a paraphrase because they've really changed the fact that Jeremiah is the one being addressed in this text and makes it sound like the people of Judah directly. But Jeremiah is to say this to them. So I can understand it, although, again, put it in the category of paraphrase and take it for what it's worth. But it's, again, a sad thing when people reject, God's people especially, reject his truth and refuse to allow themselves to be corrected by him. It leaves them in a terrible situation. The Lord's going to come back with a summary statement in the next verse 29, so check back with us as we continue working through the weekend edition in the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.